People often ask, what drives meaningful success, purpose, and lasting impact? Well, in part 2 of our holiday episode, there's a compilation of powerful insights on purpose, holistic success, and innovation. We dive into the essence of purpose, showing how it's more about a bigger mission and less about instant progress, about helping others, and pursuing what ignites your soul. These stories reveal that purpose emerges when we focus on contribution rather than oneself and attaining meaning through service. I hope you guys enjoy, learn. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great holiday.
You don't have to start a business to find success financially, and you don't have to start a business to find purpose in your work. You just have to find purpose in what you do. And I personally believe that if you can measure what you're doing and you can tie what you're doing each day to a goal, and you can see incremental gains, you can see that sort of path shortening to that goal one day at a time, then that propels you forward. And provided that goal is tied to a mission that you truly believe in, then I think your purpose will always be there.
That's exactly why I wanted to bring up the point of progress, and because I want to tie it to what your belief was around purpose. Because there's so many young people out there today that they hear these thought leaders, I'll call them thought leaders, talking about, well, you got to do what's, your purpose. And then when you talk to young people, they go, well, I don't know what my purpose is. And then they go, well, if I don't know what my purpose is, then I guess I just won't try.
This comes up a lot. I think we live in a time where there's more mental health issues than ever because people don't understand what their purpose is. And, 100 years ago, people's purpose was very simple. They had to put food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
100 years before that, they had to plant that food at a specific time and harvest it at a specific time, right? 500 years before that, you had to go out and hunt that food.
It was survival.
Yeah. And so life has gotten really easy. Let's be honest. We complain that there's no middle class, but the reality is like the lowest class right now is easier than
the best.
Like if a royal 300-400 years ago didn't have a car, right? For them to have 400 horsepower
or running water.
Exactly. And so life has gotten easy. And so at the end of the day, I think what happens is people can't find their purpose because they can't see incremental improvement. And they don't really need to go out and seek incremental improvement because life's easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I like to say when people are trying to find purpose, it's kind of simple. What do you think you could do tomorrow that would make you feel better? And their answer is usually like, oh, I'm going to go to the beach, or I'm going to do something like that. And when they answer me that way, I always say, okay, well, that's good, but is that purposeful? The only purpose there is to make you happy. But what could you do that would actually make you feel happy because you've helped other people? Not tomorrow, but what could you do this year? And when they answer that question, I can almost always see their emotions perk up because we all share this one thing. We like helping other people.
Yep.
And when you ask that question and they think about it and they come up with the answer, I always say, hey, would you be happier if that happened than if you went to the beach every day between now and the end of the year? And every time it's the same answer. Well, of course it would.
Right.
Why don't you make that your mission? And then why don't you just set some goals that allow you to get there? And if you don't get there in a year, maybe you didn't quite hit your goal, but you're going to get there.
But you move forward and you made progress.
And the happiness that you would have gotten by going to the beach tomorrow, you will get that every day by finding incremental improvement along the way to reaching that goal, to serve that mission that you're on of helping somebody else.
Yep.
And you will be happy along the way. And if you trust that, just give it a try. If you trust that, you will see that that's where happiness is hiding.
If you're not doing the thing that's yours to do, then everything is more difficult. And if it's not mine to do, it's infinitely heavy. So I feel like for me, the entrepreneurial journey was the only way because it was the path I was called toward. It was, here's what I'm called to next. And then once you have that calling is, how do I put on a white belt to learn everything I can about that domain so that I can bring all of the learned expertise and skill sets from other domains to that front.
What really is meaningful is the contribution that you make to the people around you and the people not around you, like the extended people around you.
Well, I love your share. What I hear is, and I used to think all my goals were who I wanted to be in the future. Here's who I want to be in 5 years, 10 years. And it was fascinating. I found it was a struggle to do the things that I wanted to do to become who I want to be in the future when I wasn't that now. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you have now become today what you want to be in the future, which allows it to unfold, allows it to manifest instead of being an achievement-oriented goal-setting process. It's much more of a guided manifestation process of following the path. I was reading somewhere, like, you're on the path when the path vanishes.
Right. Yeah. It's weird to say because there's a lot of still that like achiever in me. And don't get me wrong, like I don't exist on some plane. Like I'm a normal dude. I love to have fun. One of my mantras in life is we're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time. It was my dad used to say that to me all the time. And I'm very focused on that. Having fun is just as important as my personal growth. Like it's all a balance.
But when you go through a trauma or receive a diagnosis like that, you get this new pair of glasses shoved on your face and you didn't want those, and they're uncomfortable and they're heavy and everything looks different. And I felt really angry that I had these new glasses on my face that I didn't want. And I felt that way for about 2 months, and I felt it starting to impact my friendships. I was really isolating myself from everyone. It was impacting, I didn't really want to get out of bed some days because I felt that it had been easier if I hadn't made it through, because I felt like the pieces of my life that I thought were going to be were just broken. But I really made a shift when I started feeling it impact my relationship. And my boyfriend, Justin, we had started dating 4 months before I got sick. And we were young people. And it was really hard for him. And he was really strong the whole time. But I could see that my victim mindset, or my anger and my sadness and resentment, was starting to weigh on him. And I knew I had a good thing going for me. I knew he was a good one, and I didn't want to ruin that. I just made a decision one day that I was not going to let cancer take anything else away from me. I knew that I had friendships to live for, passions to live for, purpose that I needed to fulfill. And it sounds so cliche, but I wrote in a journal one day all of the things that I still wanted to achieve and all of the things that I still wanted to do, as simple as like reading this book. And I realized all the things that I still had going for me. And I clenched onto those with everything that I could and kept thinking about those positive things and trying to like banish the bad ones. And eventually, with momentum, I was able to pick that up and move on and become really happy again. So I think having a purpose was definitely the biggest force for me. That kind of speaks to, I think, a lot of young people these days lack purpose. The number of young people in high intensity sports, or just in sports in general, is declining. The number of people who have interests and passions there, because of our phones, it's declining. So then when these bad things happen, they feel like they have nothing to live for, where you need to have that thing that like sets your soul on fire and keeps you pushing towards something better.
If you're clenching, you cannot give, nor can you receive. To me, it is the foundation of the transcendence of the art of fulfillment and finding joyfulness in your life. Because if you can't love you, how are you going to love somebody else? You can pretend, you can get a little bit of love or some level of love, but you're not going to get max love. I would say for me, it has like been a pivotal thing to be able to experience and learn to have joy in my life. I mean, I'm telling you, I had fucking little to no joy.
I was there.
Okay, you saw it firsthand. I mean, even today, like, I'm not a big celebrator. Like, if I do something, I'm not a big crier of the shit that I do wrong. I'm not a big celebrator of the things I do right. So it was hard for me to find joy. Spirituality, acceptance of myself, loving myself, and deleveraging the ego were the three cornerstones for me. The triad, if you will, of being able to experience joy for no reason. To experience joy just because someone is in your space. I am relentless. It is one of the things that I do believe I have an extreme level of is relentlessness. And I probably had to learn that because of, I barely got through school. I read at a very low level. And so I had to be in order to get what I wanted.
I think you're hammering on a huge piece that is a superpower of yours, which is you establish rituals.
I do.
To help pull you to be better than you were. And those rituals, and I've watched you every single time you talked about mastery. The flip side of mastery is the dabbler. I remember the first time we went through the primary question process, I developed a new primary question. I did not ask myself that primary question every single day. And so 6 months later, it was not part of my unconscious, right? It stopped at conscious competence and I didn't drive it to unconscious competence. And what I've observed you do is take every single new awareness that you come upon is now, I'm going to drive that into a ritual and a habit to make it now an unconsciously competent part of your programming that happens automatically.
A lot of people that are type A, overly driven, overly ambitious, hardworking, tend to over-invest in their careers and under-invest in the areas of their life that they say would give them the most meaning, which is family and relationships. Because work is tangible. You can see, more money. You can see results. An extra hour with your wife or an extra hour with your child is not going to really yield tangible results. So we tend to over-invest in our careers. And later on in life, perhaps regret that. And one of my pursuits is to achieve excellence in all areas of my life. I don't want to just succeed in this business that I'm running, but also as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a friend, as in my faith, physically. And so the idea was, I want to create an experience for others who are overly worked and over busy to come together for a week of practical wisdom and life-changing tools. Because no one's going to read a parenting book or multiple parenting books for hours or relationship books, but I am, because I'm interested in this and I want to serve the community in this way.
The number one reason people succeed is belief. They've got that belief. They believe in their product, their company, their opportunity. They believe in themselves. But the number one reason people fail is they start to buy other people's story. Doesn't matter whether they buy your story. It matters whether you buy their story. If you help enough other people get what they want out of life, you'll have everything you want out of life.
If you operate from that scarcity mindset, you make decisions that, once again, are fear-based. And it's a pretty bountiful world. I'm always amazed. I often think of the limitations that I think exist, and then how often those are always blown out of the water when you look a little deeper.
I'm curious when you bring that up because, the scarcity versus abundance mindset, have you always been like that? Or is that something you had to develop into?
I had to learn that. Yeah, I had to learn that.
What'd that process look like for you?
I think it was just through the business that I really learned that mindset. When I first started out, every time I lost a client, I would just freak out. This is going to be the end. I'm going to have to hand in my resume at McDonald's and go from there. Each time that happened and a new client within a week would pop up.
I have skills that other people don't have, and other people have skills that I don't have. That doesn't make anybody better or worse. It just makes us different, but it allows us to add value to other people's lives because we have a different perspective, a different outlook, a different set of experiences. And so in my life, I've tried to create as many experiences as I possibly can. it's a crazy life, but we put so much expectation on ourselves to perform or to get an outcome or to get a result. And that pressure that we put on ourselves is undue, not necessary. I think a certain amount of pressure is good, but not a negative pressure, if that makes sense. If you focus on negative things, you're going to attach negative meanings. And if you attach negative meanings, you're going to have negative emotions. You want to change your emotion, change your meaning. And so in order to change the meaning, you have to ask the questions. How's this happening for me? Is this true? Who would I be without this thought? You're pissed off, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're depressed, you're sad. It's like, who am I with this thought? Well, that's easy. Well, who would I be without this thought? Well, I'd live in grace. I'd be thankful, I'd be appreciative. I'd be understanding. Maybe I'd be empathetic. And so you have to reverse the process. And it took a lot of time and it took a lot of, I'm very careful to not use the word discipline because the word that I really believe is that gets underused is commitment. Am I willing to pay the price to be who I want to be or to get what I want to get? And ultimately, that was one of the bigger questions that I had to face is like, am I willing to do the work? Am I committed to being the person that I want to be? Back then I was like, well, I don't even know who I want to be. I don't know what I want to be. I don't know who that is. I didn't have an identity for who I was. I burnt a marriage. Today, my ex-wife's one of my best friends. I had to recreate an identity of how to be an ex-husband, but I hadn't created an identity how to be a good husband in the first place because I didn't understand. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the first level of mastery to be able to figure out. I didn't know. I was unprepared. I was uneducated. And truthfully, I didn't have the level of consciousness. And I was like completely into myself, which was, I was into my business because that was what was really important. That's how I identified myself. It's how I met my needs for significance, met my need for certainty. I did meet my need for love and connection because I had staff and I was helping them and I was coaching them and it made me feel good. And I was useless at home as a husband because I didn't know how to do it. And I had to get skills.
At the moment, we're so busy and stressed, and a lot of us aren't taking the time to foster our relationships, to sleep well, and to eat well. And I think because we get a little bit off track with our energy and our brain fog, and we start looking for that one thing. So and that's where a lot of those little Instagram reels come in. It's like, just do this and everything will be better. Just cold plunge every day and your life will be great, or just fast and and all these magical things will happen. And the truth is, it really depends on the person.
When you have a dream, I guess, or some sort of vision of, especially in your 20s, you almost have a naive ambition, which serves you well, frankly. And I think that carries forward in a pursuit, perseverance, and just a positive mindset that I think allows you to keep knocking on more doors.
My focus is never about me. It's always about the person in front of me, helping them, meeting their needs, adding value to their lives, and creating these raving fan relationships. So my success and my income and my check over the years has really been a measuring stick on the amount of lives that I've touched either directly or indirectly with the product and the opportunity. So one of the biggest rewards in this business has been, first of all the relationships that I have all over the world in 25 plus countries that I've built my organization in, the love and connection, the growth. I've always joked that this really is a course in personal development, cleverly disguised as a network marketing business.
If work cuts into play, it's time to cut out on work. And my uncle, I remember him saying that to me, and he was a very just stoic, he didn't really joke a lot. He was very serious all the time. But if he spoke, everybody listened because he had something to say. But for him to say it too, I think it just kind of resonated with me from a very young age. And it's something that I kind of adapted to. And it's just become my motto over time. Like, I don't believe in working hard or skipping things in your life for work, for doing things that you're obligated to do, or even creating obligations. But that's why, now my tagline is work less, live more, make a difference. And that came from that saying. It's just kind of evolved into what my decisions are. It's my instincts, drilled down into that. What I was doing was designing my life and then choosing the business to go with that, to work with what I wanted rather than the other way around, which is what most people do, right? I thought, okay, it's going to be on the internet because that will let me travel. That will let me make endless amounts of money if I choose to. I'm not limited by somebody else's amount to pay me or their schedule or anything like that. So I started looking on the internet and seeing how other people were making money. And I came across somebody and he was making $50 a day. And I thought, you know what, if he can make $50 a day, I can make $50 a day. And I still didn't know how I was going to do it. But I started looking and there was this new thing that somebody was just talking about in an article. And they're talking about this new thing called blogging. Now, mind you, this is back in like 2005. So you don't really know what blogging is. It's not what it is today for sure, right? There's nobody to learn from. There's no real explanation of blogging.
Human behavior repeats in patterns that are way beyond your own lifespan. That's the crazy thing. And I don't know why it works, but it just seems to work. So in answer to your question, that's how you can plot your own life. Yeah, look at 10-year patterns.
But I also think it's useful to get really honest about whether your definition of certainty and your expression of certainty are actually in alignment. Let me unpack that a little bit. So some people might say, Joey, you were working for this big law firm. You had a great paycheck. There was going to be enough work for me to keep working there for decades, right? So there was a big piece of certainty. But when you work for someone else, you never know if today's your last day at work or not. You never know. My boss could have come in to me and said, hey, the case settled, you're fired. My boss could have come in and said, you know what, we've got too many junior associates, you're gone. My boss could have said, you know what, I don't like the way you look, you're fired. Any number of things could have happened. So this idea that if you are working in a traditional employee context and that is the definition of certainty, maybe 40, 50 years ago, when you could work for the same company for decades and get the gold watch on retirement and you had a pension and they take great care of you, maybe. But in this day and age, where we live now, I think the only thing you can be certain of is that the landscape is going to change. And if you are in command of your own ship as the landscape is changing, you are much more likely to be able to pivot, to morph, to change course as needed than if you are riding on someone else's ship.
If we have different disc profiles, one of the main things that we do is we go into it making assumptions. Now, those assumptions are driven by our own personality style. So the way we see our behavior is not how the person across the table sees it. So this is something that I will often incorporate in my desk coaching. So when I'm coaching someone, first of all, I'm showing them the strengths of their profile. I always want people to see what's amazing about their profile because I really believe I'm obviously a big proponent of self-improvement, but I also believe you shouldn't spend your life swimming against the current. I think you need to know what your zone of excellence is. What is your strength? And I think you should do everything you can to create the circumstances to allow yourself to be in that zone of strength.
But you have to think, how is the world evolving? And the insane part is, for most of us, our brains have a hard time comprehending the rate of change of our society. Things are evolving so rapidly. The global landscape is reshaping so rapidly that most people are incredibly intimidated by what's happening and very confused, and rightfully so. That's just because our brains are not capable of taking all of this data and it's like having a 5,000 piece jigsaw puzzle thrown at your face and tell me what picture did you see. It's just a lot of data coming at you, and it's not easy to process what is it that I'm seeing. This is where I love to bring on super smart guests to our different shows to try and give us clues as to what is evolving and what's happening. We live in interesting times.
I look at things like where are the demographic curves going, because demographic curves are undeniable. With demographic curves follow purchasing trends. And so, people who are looking at either being dislodged from their position or job, and or students who are looking to buy a business or start a business. I think also to your point about technology, is technology does open the door in a very significant way for people to start their own business and leverage efficiencies.
And as long as you're true to your vision, like this feels good, makes me feel alive, this makes me feel like we always say, either you're being a warning or you're being an example. Either you're adding light to the world or you're adding darkness to the world. Every time you say something nice, you're adding light. Every time you say something not so nice, you're adding darkness. I wanted to read this, if you don't mind.
Read it.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of the rules and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
We're wishing you a wonderful holiday season with your family and loved ones. From all of us at Business of Doing Business podcast and me personally, all the blessings to you guys, and thanks for listening and sharing with us throughout the year.